Now, I'll talk about the second most important and the final aspect of Annabella Carvalho's framework for analyzing print media discourse, and that is the contextual analysis. According to Annabella, no analysis can be complete without getting into deeply in the context in which that certain text or discourse has been generated. This discourse takes us beyond the text. This analysis takes us beyond the text and leads us to look into the overall coverage of that event about which a discourse has been generated in the media, in the print media especially. This analysis might involve two time-related dimensions, which we can call as synchronic and diachronic. Synchronic actually consists of analyzing the same discourse uh, or similar discourse produced about the same event at the same time. For example, if I can say, अगर कोई एक न्यूज़ आइटम एक अखबार में छपी है तो सेम न्यूज़ आइटम किसी दूसरी अखबार में कैसे छपी है. This is what we can look into. This can be called, and then in another newspaper, how that has been printed. So there might be some variation in the representation of that synchronic representation of the reality. So this could be an important and comparative aspect of the presentation in the text. That's why Annabella Carvalho probably would have preferred calling it a comparative synchronic analysis, in which we will not only analyze the text but also look into its comparative constructions in various other news items, outlets, or newspapers, roughly speaking. It looks into various representations of an issue at the time of the writing of one aspect of one specific news text. More specifically, we compare one text with other representations of the issue in other news outlets, in other newspapers, or other forms of media, and this can be seen into to the items printed in the same time zone, or maybe with a smaller variation in time but about the same topic. We can just look into, but the difference in time should not be greater, so that it may not lose the synchronic aspect. कि एक ही वक्त पे होने वाले वाक़यात की जो रिप्रेजेंटेशन आती है डिफरेंट न्यूज़पेपर्स में, उसको देखने के लिए इस तरह का कंपैरेटिव synchronic analysis है, that can be very useful. The comparison of different media depictions, how the same event has been depicted in various news items, how the victory of a political leader has been represented in for example, in different newspapers, would be interesting to be noted. That shows newspapers' ideologies, their own relationship with that political figure, etc., etc. So that could actually comment a lot about the framing of a certain news item. It attempts to reconstitute the original event, sometimes discursive or non-discursive. So by cross-referencing, we can deeply imagine and look into the media representations, maybe the distorting of facts by certain media groups or newspapers. We can have a fair idea how the text or discourse event has been manipulated by some authors than others. It also gives us a chance to have a fair assessment of journalistic intervention or authorial intervention, how a certain author or a journalist has reported or misreported a certain event, and what kind of personal interventions he would have brought in while doing it. It is a confrontation of alternative depictions of reality, and would also would definitely increase our critical reading and our readers' critical ability also, because it would give us a chance to analyze various alternative depiction of the reality of the same event. Then the second important aspects of this historical analysis is, or contextual analysis is, historical diachronic analysis. It focuses on looking into various broader contextual factors or historical factors in which that particular news event happened, or the discourse about that news event was generated. We need to look into the history, the contextual situation of that text. more importantly. The historical conditions and the contextual production of mediated discourses have to be accounted for in this kind of analysis. Then at the second level, we need to look into the temporal evolution of mediated discourses. And in other words, we can say how the history of media constructions can be known. So we need to look into the sequences of events in which a certain discourse has been generated. For example, a news item may have been, or an event may have been generated for a longer period of time in a print media or in a mainstream media. How that event has been reported repeatedly, and what kind of changes were brought in, and what kind of biographical aspect of that event is. Were just capturing these historical developments, these you can say time-wise developments is very important. So they knowing the biography of an event is very important aspect of the historical analysis or the contextual analysis of a text. Also, it looks specifically speaking into the sequence of discursive constructions of an issue, how a certain text or discourse has been generated, and in which sequence it was generated, what came first, what came later, and what came even after that. This is what needs to be known. As I said, the biographical study of social and political matters helps in this kind of analysis. The identification of discursive effects can also be an important aspect of historical analysis, or in other words, the contextual analysis of printed text. Because identifying these effects, what happened after the production of a certain or the representation of certain news discourse, could possibly help our readers to understand the analysis or the ideology or the purpose, intention, as I said earlier, the motivation behind a text in a more accurate and deep manner as compared to a situation where we don't get into such kind of analysis. So, to sum up, a good analysis of a print media as far as Annabella's framework is concerned may include both textual as well as contextual features, and analyzing both textual and contextual features of a text can help us understanding the real motivations and interpretations of a text.